Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. My name is Will, and I have the honor and the privilege to bring you a very important conversation today with Ethan and Wren from the Saskatoon region. They're going to be sharing a really amazing story about how they have been sharing their faith, how they've been sharing evangelism in their city and what they've been doing, and how God catalyzed what they were up to for a really cool movement that we see happening in Canada right now. And I can't wait as they begin to share about the practice of witness and how we as youth workers can equip our students to share their faith as well. So let's dive in today. I am here with two very special people. What are your guys' names? Do you mind introducing yourselves to us?
Hi, I'm Ethan Zorb.
And I'm Wren Bargan.
And we have this amazing opportunity to have a discussion and a dialogue today in our spiritual discipline series that we have been in. And we're talking about the spiritual discipline of witness, or in other words, evangelism or sharing our faith. And I cannot wait for the discussion that we just get to have today. I'm very excited for it. You guys ready to jump in?
Yeah.
Awesome, let's do it. To begin, tell me a little bit about your journey of how you started a youth elf in your school and how you catalyzed what I just called a movement in Saskatoon area and what I would like to even say further, Canada, and how God's been working in the area of the spiritual discipline of witness, of evangelism in your guys' life.
So we started a youth alpha last year, or I did, and another girl, she graduated. So, and then me and Ethan continued it this year. And it's just been amazing to have this opportunity of sharing our faith at school, just like fully displayed and like laid out for us by the Youth Alpha program. And in that we could just grow in sharing with the people around us and really, just acting in that spiritual discipline of witnessing. It's been very, very good and just cool to see how many people have come out to that and just supported us outside of our school and inside of our school, and then where it's taken us this year. I've had the privilege of talking at the 306 Network Rally and just seeing how it's inspired so many people around the city, junior youth and senior youth in their high schools, elementary schools, to start their own Youth Alpha program and just reach out to the people in their schools.
Yeah, for me, this was really my first time doing public evangelism in this kind. And I've loved it. And being able to speak at the Youth Alpha training, it didn't seem like a big thing, but it's the little things that matter that we've been able to spread the gospel in that way and help others start theirs as well.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about the context you guys are in, your high school, your guys' grades, like everything like that. Like, tell me what led up to this moment. Like, what was your experience when you first started this Youth Alpha? Because I know that it wasn't all just sunshine and rainbows.
Well, for me, Wren started the year before, so they kind of did the breaking in for the school part of it. But for us, or for me to start it this year, there was the talking with principals, getting it approved and everything like that. But once that happened, it was kind of easy to start it from there.
Yeah, so last year we found that a lot of the grade 12s were interested in coming out to Youth Alpha, which was amazing to see. And we had a pretty consistent group. But then, of course, as next year, I was in grade 11 last year, grade 12 this year, they all graduated. And so when me and Ethan started it up again this year, we had a whole new crew of people that we wanted to get involved. But it was then harder to make those connections and see who's interested in coming out and who wants to be a part of this. So we had me and Ethan as our full group for the first about 2 weeks. And so we just sat in an empty classroom, and it was hard because I knew how impactful this club had been last year and just being a part of it with those grade 12s. And so then just to see it somewhat empty this year was a little bit discouraging.
Yeah, but the one thing when I was talking to my parents is we're trying. We are trying to spread God's love. So those 2 weeks in the empty classroom was trying.
Wow.
But we didn't give up. And it's become a great piece to go from there. So
yeah, and that's incredible. So you start your first 2 weeks of this year, no one shows up. Everyone's worst nightmare when it comes to like sharing your faith, evangelism. You're like, that feels like the worst outcome, right? But then all of a sudden, like you just mentioned, things started happening. Like all of a sudden, like this rally at the 306 happens. People are like encouraged to go do this. You guys both spoke at your own respective times. And then all of a sudden, like 5, 10, 20, all these youth alphas in this city, in this greater area, like in all of the different towns around Saskatoon, start popping up. And it was catalyzed really by what you guys started. Like, how do you guys feel about that?
I think it's amazing just to be a part of this, because a lot of the times it can seem like our youth alpha is insignificant because it's our school and it's like our friends who are coming out to this every week, and like it's awesome. It's a small group, but then just to kind of take a step back and see the impact it's had on the whole city, it's just amazing to see how God has worked through just our small like faithfulness in running this youth alpha program at our school, and maybe thinking, oh, it's not actually doing much, but then it's opened up so many opportunities that me and Ethan would never have had to just encourage the other youth in our city who want to share their faith but don't maybe know how, to just be able to start their own programs.
Yeah, didn't seem, like Wren said, didn't seem like a very big thing. It was just one school, one youth alpha, few kids coming every week. But as we've been running this, we've seen more and more youth alpha programs start. And like, there's many in the city that we didn't even know were happening. And that was because of us leading ours in our one school, one little classroom. So through that, it said like one thing can be a lot for everyone and the city themselves. So
that's incredible. So this is an amazing story. Like, I just need to say, like, in a lot of ways, as a youth pastor sitting right here, it's like every youth pastor's dream, something like this would happen. But we also need to turn it back to volunteer youth workers, who is the main people who will be listening to something like this. So often I feel like for me, I think of like how to create a strategy and how difficult it might be to get into these schools and get our students to share our faith. But you guys just kind of went for it. So maybe explain to me when we could turn it back to volunteer youth workers and how they could encourage to equip their students to share their faith, to be witnesses in their schools, in their contexts, their spaces. What would you guys say to youth workers listening to this podcast right now?
I think what helped for like me to start sharing my faith was just knowing that there was resources and like these videos for Youth Alpha out there that can just help and support me to go through that and to just have a place to come back to when I'm wanting to share my faith. But also something that Youth Alpha always makes it very clear is that you don't need to be the leader when you're talking to your peers about Jesus, when you're sharing your faith. You don't need to have all the answers. You're called a host instead, because you're there to just make people feel welcome and make it so that it's a safe space for any questions. And even if you can't answer that question, it still has been said. And there's something powerful in just coming to a place where your friends can ask you any question they have about life, or even just random strangers at your school. Yeah. They'll come to you because they know you're a safe person. And I think that's one of the most important parts about sharing your faith in high school with your peers today.
Yeah. One thing that I've said almost every question is, I don't know all the answers, but like have someone you can go to. Be the person that people can turn to you for answers. And if you don't have them, be willing to find someone to answer those questions for you and come back. And yeah.
So what I'm hearing you guys saying is like, just go for it. Like just encourage your students to try. But like, as I'm thinking as a youth worker myself, like often when I encourage our students to just go and share their faith, like it just kind of stops there. Like they go home and they're like, well, I'm just kind of not do that because that's scary. So if you guys were in the shoes of a youth worker, like how would you encourage your own students to go out and share their faith, whether that be through something like a tool like Youth Alpha or through just sharing their faith with their friends? Like, what's the starting place to you guys? Because you guys have done something really extraordinary. And I think like you have some really cool wisdom to share to us as youth workers. But what is it?
I think something that I would give as advice is it can be scary for sure to just have those conversations about faith and about what this life is all about. But it's actually a conversation that most kids, even our age, younger, actually are thinking about. They're questioning and they're wanting to know, like, what is the deeper meaning? What's happening here? And so really, like, the hardest part is starting those conversations. And I would say, like, if you are somebody who's willing to do that, that is amazing. But also sometimes your friends or people will start asking those questions. And I think a really big part of sharing your faith is just not shying away from that. Yeah. And just, when you see any sort of opportunity to have any kind of meaningful conversation about life and just about purpose and faith, just jumping in and being there and being supportive and just saying, yeah, I've wondered that too. Or like, hey, this is what I think about that. And just being willing to take that step of just sharing kind of where you're coming from.
Wow.
Yeah, it can be really scary to start, but it's really meaningful when you actually do get started and gets going. But being not afraid to share is one of the biggest things. Like, we go to a public high school where Christianity is not spoken of. It is taboo, basically, compared to other religions. So just being willing to answer questions when people ask, because like that may be the only time they meet or hear the words of Jesus that year or that ever even. So just being willing to answer questions is a really, really big one.
Wow. So what I'm hearing, I hear three things right now. I hear be open to engage in conversations. Like I would say, like I'm hearing like push your students to just be open to engaging in these questions. They don't need to have all the answers, but they just need to be able to say, hey, like I have some thoughts. I have other people who might have the answers, but just be open to questions. And maybe even just the second thing would be to be curious, like to try to ask questions yourself is what I'm hearing. And then the number 3 thing I'm hearing is being invitational, right? Like we're not trying to push something down someone's throat, for lack of better terms, is what I'm hearing from you, but to be invitational, to invite, to like continue to stir up the curiosity in your school, in your room, wherever that looks like. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, definitely would be. And like, don't shy people away either, because we have multiple people in our group who aren't Christians. So just be willing to take everybody in every walk of life, I would say as well.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely always be an open door. People, if they're not comfortable, they won't stay, and that's fine. That'll happen. But if you're always there welcoming and just reminding them, hey, we're still here, that's just kind of, the point is to be that welcoming, safe space.
Wow. That's incredible. So one last thing that I'm going to go at is, for you guys, you did actually start something formal, like a Youth Alpha. And sometimes these tools can be some of the most helpful things for us to share our faith, to even then help students who are up and coming to do something like that too. So what would you say to a youth worker? Like, what can a youth worker do to best help a student as they engage? Like, is it just be like, just get me the pizza to this Youth Alpha at this classroom at this time? That'd be the best thing. Like, what kind of partnership is the best thing for like you guys, and then for what you would share for other students? Because often I think us as youth workers, we want to help as much as we can, but often we don't necessarily know how, or we don't necessarily know how to engage in what you guys actually need. So what would you guys say if you went back? What could be the most ideal way a youth worker could help you guys with? And what advice would you give to other people who are youth workers who might be helping students move towards things like, say, in a formal Youth Alpha setting, or just engaging and sharing their faith in their schools in a normal way as well? What would that be?
I think the main thing is ask what they need from you, and be just willing to, even if it's not like, oh, we need pizza, but not right now. Be willing to help at any point during the experience of them sharing it. And just like be open and be ready for questions, because they may have kids who ask questions. So like for my dad, who's my youth worker, he was like, yeah, if you have any questions, anybody asks a question, just ask me so I could go to him. So be ready for when they turn to you for questions, or just little help with like, hey, could I have pizza? Or could we hold an event here? And just be willing and open to respond to any questions they have. So it's not much of a you ask them, it's more of a let them ask you kind of situation, but make sure they know you're there for help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a youth running it, I would say something that I think would have been helpful for us would be, if you are a youth running Youth Alpha, definitely tell your youth worker you're running it. Yeah, so I didn't do that the first year, but the second year we got there, because it just opens up so many more doors than I thought was possible. And I think it's very helpful to provide food, because that is part of the Youth Alpha program, but like your youth worker can help you in that. And then also as a youth, something that I found helpful, and that would have been a lot of help the first year, would be just like the check-ins, like, oh, how's it going? Like, I know what day you're running Youth Alpha, so I'm gonna message you on that day and just ask like, hey, how did it go? And just those check-ins so that you're reflecting on the experience yourself, and you kind of come back and like think, okay, what can we do next week? What would work different? What would work better? What is God doing here in our school? And it makes everything a lot more intentional. And then also, I think just having leadership training, because when you're running something like Youth Alpha, you are being a leader in your school. And so I think the Youth Alpha training really was helpful.
Yeah.
And it would have been something great to have like at the very beginning of when we started Youth Alpha.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I'm hearing a few things. Like I'm hearing like, be open to like, as a youth worker, to engage in any conversation. Like ask the questions so that they know what's happening, but like don't just ask them, like text them every single day how they're doing, but just be open and ready, right? And then for the student, if there happens to be a student here, tell your youth worker, but youth workers figure out what's going on. So I'm hearing a little bit of both of that. But then the other thing is just be ready to like have these conversations, to engage in the needs of like what these students want and need, and that will set our students up for success. Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast, thank you for being with us. Ethan and Wren, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been so valuable, and I think it will help us as youth workers engage our students in witness and evangelism all throughout our spheres. So we appreciate the time. See you guys later. Bye now.